It's time for Top Story now here on France 24. And 4 months on, and despite heavy bombing, Colonel Muammar Gaddafi is clinging on as Libya's leader. Britain added to the diplomatic pressure yesterday by expelling the 8 remaining diplomats accredited to London. By taking the action, London came into line with the US, France, Italy and other NATO allies, which had already declared the rebels' National Transitional Council as the de facto government of Libya. Well, later today, the United Nations Security Council will hold a meeting to be updated on the Allies' military campaign in Libya. In a moment, we're going to be talking to our international affairs editor, Annette Young, who's with me here on set. But first, let's have a look at this report.
One by one, diplomats leave the Libyan embassy as British police watch on. They're the last remaining representatives of Gaddafi's regime in London.
They deserve this decision. Get out. They are we call them Gaddafi's raid because they support the killer, the murder. They deserve to kick out.
It is a bit late, but it is fine. As long as the UK recognize the Transitional Council and they recognize the Transitional Council, it is appreciated step from the Libyan people, all of them.
At the end of March, the British embassy in Tripoli closed its doors and a delegation was sent to Benghazi, the home of Libya's National Transitional Council. Now, ties are going deeper.
Through its actions, the National Transitional Council has shown its commitment to a more open and democratic Libya. And we are inviting the National Transitional Council to appoint a new Libyan diplomatic envoy to take over the Libyan embassy in London.
In Tripoli, authorities called the move illegal and irresponsible.
They are flogging a dead horse. The rebels will not be benefited from this. It will be another illegal move, but will not help them to achieve their criminal goals.
Still, from the streets of London, all the way to Benghazi, Libya's rebels and their supporters have hailed the development, calling it an economic and political boost.
So Annette Young, international affairs editor, with me here, as I say, on the set. There does seem to be some flip-flopping, doesn't there, regarding Gaddafi? Is there any kind of clear strategy emerging, do you think?
Well, from the early on, the aim was clearly to oust Gaddafi, and that seems to have gone out the window. And once again, it reveals the lack of on-the-ground intelligence that the Allies had when they embarked on this campaign. And diplomacy is now being driven by the fact that this military campaign is clearly draining NATO resources and, again, happening amid constant pleas from Libyan rebel groups to have more supplies, more ammunition and medical aid and so on. Now, they're treading very carefully, NATO is, because they're trying to not see a situation where they're going to have an escalation on the ground, where they're going to have to commit even more troops. And just at this point, I just wanted to sort of alert the viewer to the fact of just the number of sorties that have gone on since the beginning of the campaign. And of course, I've momentarily lost the figures. Here we are.
Always the way.
Always the case. That, you know, it's conducted since March 31, something in the order of 16,555 sorties, wow, of which 6,200 plus have been actually military strikes. There are still 17 ships under NATO command patrolling the Mediterranean Sea to enforce that UN arms embargo. And some 186 ships have been boarded and 9 have been diverted since the beginning of that arms embargo. But it just gives you some idea of the military resources which have been committed to this campaign. More than half of Tripoli's key instalments are in ruins after the bombing, and there are renewed reports, obviously, of shortages of food and fuel. But of course this comes against the backdrop of these intensive back-channel discussions trying to come up with some sort of exit strategy, primarily what to do with Gaddafi. And we saw earlier this week both Britain and France's foreign ministers meeting, talking about the possibility of Gaddafi staying in place with the rebels taking over. And of course that's created a great deal of debate on the rebels' side.
Sure. And the West also seems to be trying to do its bit, if you like, to build up the National Transitional Council. What are they doing?
Well, as we saw, Britain is the latest in the line of countries who've now recognised the council, but the main thing is money. And those Libyan rebels are saying that's what they need in order for this campaign to be a success. Now, the Americans are now allowing the rebel government somewhere in the order of $30 billion to Libyan assets which are currently being held in the US. Britain is unfreezing somewhere in the order of 120 million euros. And Berlin over the weekend, last weekend that is, gave the rebels a loan set against frozen funds of somewhere in the order of 100 million euros. But the problem is that Western diplomats are saying in Benghazi, that's all well and good, but is the money actually going through? And there's been a lot of questions being raised about the sort of financial transparency of the council and the fact that there's a lack of accounting mechanisms, which is not surprising given the very messy, complicated situation that they now find themselves in.
And 15 seconds to answer the question just about Ramadan. I mean, is that likely to affect things on the ground?
It is. I mean, there is a Quranic dispensation which allows rebel fighters to literally continue on with the battle. But not surprisingly, I'm sure many of them will sort of, effectively not participate during the day and only fight during the night. And NATO, in the meantime, has said they're obviously going to take greater care when it comes to embarking on further military strikes.
All right, Annette, thank you very much. That's Annette Young here with today's top story. News coming up. Stay with us.